The Cosmere begins with the Shattering of Adonalsium. Let's explore what Adonalsium was, why the Shattering happened, look at what happened after, and consider if everything is going according to his design. Welcome to Second Breakfast. My name's Lee. Join me as we explore the lore of the Cosmere, the history of Warcraft, and other notable fantasy worlds. So what was Adonalsium? It is a question that fans and characters frequently debate. Brandon Sanderson has been deliberately cagey, and the in-universe characters who know most about it tend to be the ones least willing to talk about it. But here is what we can say with confidence. Adonalsium was the singular source of all the Investiture in the Cosmere, and largely considered a god and a creator. Investiture is the Cosmere's term for magical energy, stormlight, allomantic power, breath and the door. All of it is Investiture. All of it originates with Adonalsium. And the name is almost certainly meaningful. Fans have pulled it apart, and Brandon Sanderson himself has confirmed the etymology is intentional. We know that it derives from Adonai, a Hebrew name for God. But other than that, we do not know much more else about the name. Adonalsium created the three realms, the physical realm, the cognitive realm, and the spiritual realm. He did this through use of the 4 Dawn Shards. With these Dawn Shards, Adonalsium created the Rosharan system, and Roshar itself is considered by Tanavast to be a masterwork of Adonalsium. Roshar harbours the 3 primeval spren of the wind and stone and night. There's real debate about whether Adonalsium was benevolent, indifferent, or something more complicated. We just don't know. The individuals who were present for the Shattering disagree, and each held different motivations as to why they pursued the downfall of Adonalsium. Going back to those spren that I just mentioned, the Wind itself, an important character in the 5th Stormlight Archive book, considered Adonalsium to be a caring god. It is debated as to whether Adonalsium was a force or a person. Personally, much like Chris, I believe Adonalsium was a being rather than a force. The Shattering was a gathering of individuals with conflicting viewpoints and a unifying to overcome a greater foe. This all feels very human, the posturing before the event, the justifications and the regret after. To me, it all feels too emotionally charged to be a simple splintering of an almighty, all-powerful, emotionally void force of nature. But let's explore in closer detail as we consider the details of the Shattering itself. The Shattering happened on Yolen, where 18 people gathered together and killed a god, and that is where the Cosmere as we know it began. As previously mentioned, they did it with the Dawn Shards, ancient tools of immense power that predate the Shattering itself. The details of just what the Dawn Shards are and how they work is a whole other video, but what matters here is that when it was done, the power of Adonalsium fragmented. It split into 16 pieces that most of the conspirators picked up, and those pieces are what we call the Shards of Adonalsium. The motivations of the conspirators are where things really get interesting. Some of them we know. Rays, who ended up with the shard called Odium, seem to have acted out of a hunger for power and desire to be free of a god that he resented. Others may have genuinely believed that the Shattering itself was necessary, that Adonalsium's existence was itself a problem. 2 of the participants of the Shattering did not take up a shard, one of them being Hoyd, or Wit as you most know him from the Stormlight Archive series. He was offered one, but he refused. So why? Hoyd said that he did it because he wanted to retain his freedom. But the truth is that this question sits at the heart of some of the best Cosmere theory work out there, and we'll do a video on Hoyd later down the line. For now, just know that Hoyd has been alive since before any of the Shard worlds existed, and he has an agenda that nobody really fully understands. But for me, what makes the Shattering so unsettling is that the 16 people who did it, they weren't all villains. Some of them became villains after. Some of them even tried hard not to be a villain, and then continued to go down that path anyway. And this leads us to the real tragedy, because the act of taking up a shard is where the person starts to lose their soul to the deific intent of the shard. Each shard is a fragment of Adonalsium's total power, and each carries what's called an intent. An intent is a defining principle that shapes everything the shard does. Honour, preservation, ruin, cultivation, odium, endowment. These words are at the core of what each shard does and how they interact with the worlds around them. And this is where those 16 participants got more than what they bargained for. The shard remakes you around its intent. Hold preservation for long enough and you become almost incapable of allowing anything to change. Hold ruin and the pull towards entropy becomes overwhelming, regardless of your own objectives. The person you were before starts to erode. 80, the original vessel of ruin on Scadrial, is the clearest example of this. By the time of the first Mistborn trilogy, the Shard Ruin has fully corrupted 80 with his own intents. Here are various quotes in support of this. It is clear that over time, the intent of the Shard will slowly take over the vessel and its personality. Before the Shattering, the 16 vessels agreed to separate once they took up the Shards. However, this agreement was quickly withdrawn. Some of them paired up. Ruin and Preservation went to Scadrial together. Honour and Cultivation went to Roshar, and others, such as Endowment, went alone. So, just where are they now? Let's do a quick rundown because the current state of the Cosmere is very different from how it all started. On Scadrial, the world of Mistborn, Ruin and Preservation both lost their original vessels. At the end of the trilogy, Sazed had picked up both shards, merging them into a whole new combined shard. This was called Harmony. Two opposing intents held by one person, and he's been trying to maintain that balance ever since, but the cracks are finally starting to show. On Sel, the world of Elantris, Odium came through early and splintered both Devotion and Dominion, killing both of their vessels. Their power didn't disappear. It's still there, trapped and turbulent in the cognitive realm, forming the door. Every magic system on Sel draws from it, but the door is unstable. Two shards forced together without anyone holding them, their opposing intent grinding against each other constantly. And on Nalthis, the world of Warbreaker, Endowment sits quietly, giving out breath to the returned, seemingly unbothered by the wider Cosmere. She even rebuffed Hoyd when he tried to build a coalition against Odium. Whatever her long game is, she's keeping it close. And on Roshar, this is where things really get complicated. 3 shards settled there: Honour, Cultivation, and Odium. Honour was supposedly killed by Odium, thousands of years before the Stormlight Archive series begins. Cultivation spent the whole series quietly manoeuvring people decades in advance. And as at the end of Wind and Truth, Odium's original vessel, Raze, is dead, replaced by Taravangian, who then picked up the newly located Shard of Honour, thanks to the help of Dalinar Kholin. Taravangian went on to merge these 2 shards, creating a new one, called Retribution. After this, Cultivation subsequently fled off-world. And then there's Ambition, a shard that was instantly attacked by Odium, and got splintered for its trouble. Its death left wounds across the Cosmere to an extent that we don't fully yet understand. Virtuosity is a unique case. She went to a world called Komashi, and then splintered herself deliberately, the only shard in the Cosmere to do that, and we don't really fully understand why. Autonomy we know is active, spreading influence across multiple worlds simultaneously, which in itself is its own fascinating problem. Autonomy has multiple avatars and is active in Scadrial, Taldane, and many more locations through these avatars. The remaining shards, Invention, Mercy, Valor, Whimsy, Reason, are still largely off-page, and they're still a mystery. But also, that means there's still an opportunity. I expect we'll hear more from them in future books. But in short, of the 16 shards to emerge from the Shattering, 4 have been replaced by 2 dual shards, and the rest are scattered across the Cosmere in various states of scheming, hiding, or slowly being consumed by their own intent. The divine landscape of the Cosmere looks nothing like what the original 16 conspirators intended. So, we have established what Adonalsium was, and how its power was shattered into various shards, and then where those shards are now. Let's now consider a rather interesting possibility following a theory surrounding Nohadon, the old king of Alephela, and the author of The Way of Kings. Before I get into it, let me give credit to Herald of Dogs over at the 17th Shard. Much of this theory is derived from his post, and I'll give you a link to that in the description. Firstly, consider that the shards know all possible futures, as seen in Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive. With this in mind, it leads us to believe that Adonalsium let the Shattering happen. By letting himself get shattered, he essentially abdicated the cosmic throne and his responsibility to rule over the Cosmere. So what evidence is there that suggests that Nohadon was Adonalsium? Well, the name itself, No-Adon, translates to no god in Hebrew, as earlier referred. But much more evidence can be gathered from Dalinar's vision with Nohadon at the end of Wind and Truth, right after he took up the Shard of Honor. From a bird's eye view, I believe that for the book to slow down with this type of scene so late, it makes me believe that this scene is far more significant than we may initially think. Furthermore, Dalinar seems to notice a difference to Nohadon in this particular vision. Nohadon is more present, he's more lucid, as opposed to the hard retelling of the past featured in his previous visions. This vision is clearly different to the ones that Dalinar previously experienced. So is Nohadon, the old king of Alephela, connected to Adonalsium somehow? What evidence is there? Throughout the Way of Kings, we learn about the life of Nohadon. He was a king who abdicated his throne. He spoke of the strength to stand up and walk away. He considers the effect of a king gifting his people with his absence so that they may grow and solve their own problems. This commentary from Nohadon can strongly be argued to correlate with the same decision that Adonalsium may have considered in allowing his own shattering, and it would answer the question as to how an all-powerful god came to an untimely ending. It would also reaffirm Tanavast's observations that Adonalsium did not fight back, as noted in Wind and Truth. Tanavast also commented on his regret that he did not study Nohadon further. A strange comment from a being who possesses near omniscient level of knowledge, and even the ability to see into the future. This again lends itself to the idea that there is far more to Nohadon than meets the eye. Indeed, Tanavast is advised by the wind that it is not Adonalsium entirely, implying that the wind is partly made of Adonalsium. But more importantly, the wind advises Tanavast to listen. This leads to Tanavast to come to the conclusion that his interventions were not necessary, and perhaps the people are better off without him. This sounds awfully similar to Nohadon, and by extension of the wind, Adonalsium. Nohadon also provides boasts about hiding in plain sight, despite being so famed. But Dalinar was not without his doubts, and he challenged Nohadon in this vision. He wanted to know who Nohadon was. Indeed, Brandon Sanderson specifically invites Dalinar and the reader to consider Nohadon's identity in this very chapter. Dalinar's own reflections is that he felt like a man talking to a man. Only by this point, Dalinar was not just a man. He possessed the Shard of Honor, and he was God in his own right. Can we therefore not assume that this was not a man talking to a man, but was instead a god talking to a god? And when you think about it, how else could this sentient, lucid version of Nohadon have hidden from Odium if he was not indeed a god himself? And finally, after the contest of champions and Dalinar renouncing his oaths, we know that Taravangian wanted to claim Dalinar. He was then denied on the basis that he is already claimed by another. Who? Who could possibly deny arguably the most powerful being in the Cosmere? Not one, but two Shards of Adonalsium, only rivaled by Harmony at Scadrial. It appears that Dalinar's soul was taken by a being whose power exceeds far greater than Odium's and Harmony's, and I look forward to seeing what comes from it in the future books of the Stormlight Archive. So what do you think? Was it Nohadon and Adonalsium, or was it somebody else? Thank you for coming along with me on this longer video. I've been meaning to review the lore of Adonalsium for a while after finishing the series, and I hope you have similarly learned something just as I have. The idea that Nohadon is a being of importance, and perhaps even connected to Adonalsium itself, is exciting, and I genuinely cannot wait to see what's next for Dalinar's spirit, and to see if Nohadon remains involved in the ongoing narrative. There is still so much more to learn about Adonalsium, and Brandon Sanderson has been cagey about the details. What do you think? Do you think Nohadon is Adonalsium? Or do you think Adonalsium can ever be reformed? Personally, I'm a believer. I love the theory that Nohadon is Adonalsium, and given his ideology of non-intervention, it leads me to wonder, what next? Let me know down in the comments if you also find this particular theory interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if there is anything I've missed out that could contribute to the wider discussion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. My intention is to create new videos at least every 2 weeks on topics just like this one, and anything else I want to learn more about in the Cosmere, because if I have the question, maybe you do too. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.